Overlooked, overlooked, overlooked Bible. Overlooked, what didn't you see? Overlooked, overlooked, overlooked Bible. Look a little closer to solve the mystery. To solve the mystery.
If you haven't already, please subscribe to the channel. Help support us by clicking on the button below.
If you'd like to be a full sponsor or a partial sponsor of an episode of the Overlooked Bible, please follow the instructions on the screen. Thank you. Was God really testing Abraham? Why did Abraham respond with eagerness and enthusiasm when God commanded him to sacrifice Isaac? These are the following key verses for this presentation. Please follow along in your own Bibles if you wish. Let's clear up something before we begin. Today, people think the ancestors had the same concept of an institutionalized, omnipotent, defined God as we have. But when you read the Bible, you see God as more experimental, emotional, and open for negotiation. Ours is a corporate God. Theirs was a marketplace God. Had Abraham believed in a corporate God, there would have been no reason for God to test him. Abraham didn't see the God we see. He saw a limited version of God. He didn't see the God of the 10 plagues, the Exodus, or the revelation at Sinai. He could only see what had happened before him and during his life. He knew the God of creation, the flood, a 90-year-old woman conceiving. That makes Abraham's belief in God even more impressive. Conventional wisdom sees God testing Abraham's faith, but maybe that's not the only way to look at this. If Abraham was already a firm believer, then God would know it and not need to test him at all. If Abraham is the first monotheist, then God doesn't have an identifiable role in history prior to this point. It's true God communicates with Adam, Eve, and Noah. Then why aren't they considered the first monotheists? It must be that they don't believe this God that talks to them is the only God. In ancient times, nearly all people explained their world through the lens of religion. If a woman got pregnant, it was due to the fertility god. If they succeeded in defeating enemies, it was due to the god of war. And if the crops were plentiful, then it was due to the god of harvests. To think at the flick of a switch, Abraham went from that to a complete understanding of God as the omnipotent creator is unreasonable. Abraham was the first to realize there was only one God. But what did that mean practically? Abraham would have asked himself, what are God's characteristics? What can he do? What are his powers? If God had not yet revealed these things, Abraham couldn't know the answers. Perhaps you think Abraham concluded this lone God was responsible for agriculture, war, fertility, etc. Then why, when God tells him that Sarah will conceive, does he laugh? No one would react that way to our corporate God. But to this marketplace God, whose capabilities no one knows, perhaps laughter is a normal reaction. Maybe we need to reevaluate what these trials were really about. Maybe we have it wrong. It wasn't about Abraham proving himself to God. It was about God proving himself to Abraham. Weren't we discussing the Akeidah? Right, let's get back to that. Why did Abraham respond to the command with such zeal? And he rose in the morning. And then when the angel tells him to stop, he ignores the angel. If Abraham had access to negotiate with God over the fate of Sodom, then why didn't he attempt to negotiate to save Isaac? Abraham is a man eager to carry out this command. The verse before the Akeidah might be the key to understanding the entire episode. It says, and Abraham dwelt in the land of the Philistines for many days. Rashi says Abraham dwelt in Philistia for 26 years. Is it possible God needed to find out if 26 years of living with the Philistines rubbed off on Abraham negatively? The Philistines' premier god was Dagon. This god was also worshipped in Abraham's native Ur Kasdim. Want to guess how he was worshipped? You guessed it, child sacrifice. Why would anyone sacrifice their child? The sacrifice was seen as a way to ask a God for even greater things. Abraham lived nearly his whole life in places where this was common practice. Did Abraham think that sacrificing Isaac was the key to God's prophecy being fulfilled? God promised, "In Isaac will seed be called to you." If it's unclear to you what that means, maybe it was also unclear to Abraham, because when God promised that Abraham will become a great nation, there's no mention of Isaac. While Abraham never voluntarily sacrificed Ishmael or Isaac, when he gets the command, it all seems to make sense to him that sacrificing Isaac is the gateway to the fulfillment of the promise, and he leaps to do it. No negotiation, no deliberation, no discussion. It's the ultimate act of devotion, and Abraham is ready for it. But what could Abraham possibly want of God? The only answer that makes any sense is that by sacrificing Isaac, God would then allow Abraham and Sarah to have many more children and become the great nation as promised. Was God really testing Abraham? Yes. Judging by his zeal to sacrifice his son, he needed the test, but it was also God revealing to Abraham who he was and his opposition to child sacrifice. Why did Abraham respond with eagerness and enthusiasm when God commanded him to sacrifice Isaac? Regional influences convinced him that sacrificing Isaac would lead to the fulfillment of the prophecy. Overlooked is the importance of the previous episode in Philistia. God wanted to see if Abraham was influenced by their practices. God also wanted to reveal more of himself to Abraham. Please leave any comments below. Don't forget to subscribe to the channel, and thanks for watching.